Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Jameson Files. I'm your host, Carrie Weber. Thank you so much for being a part of our Jameson Files community and for watching or listening wherever you connect to us right here on our podcast. We are recording live once again at the ADA annual meeting, SmileCon 2022 in Houston, Texas. And I am over the moon thrilled to have a special guest with us for this episode, Jameson client and friend, Dr. Kassi Klein. Dr. Klein, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm excited to talk to you. Dr. Klein is from the Houston area, Spring, Texas.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Not too far from where we're sitting right now. You are native to the great state of Texas. Went
Correct,
to
yes.
Undergrad at Texas Tech, and then got your DDS from the University of Texas School of Dentistry in Houston, correct?
That's right.
And so since graduating, you have an amazing practice where you are starting to really expand your services and clarify a vision for the treatment you want to provide and the practice that you have. And that's been a journey for you. So I want to talk about that journey a little bit and share that story, but then also talk specifically about, you have a found passion for airway treatment for your patient families. So we'll definitely want to get into that when it arrives. So, but to start, Dr. Klein, I'd love for you to share a little bit of just about your story. What led you to dentistry and led you to where you are today?
It's so funny. People always ask me that, and I never feel like I have the perfect answer for that, right? Dentistry is, maybe it found me, maybe I found it. I somewhere along the line realized I loved looking at people's teeth. I love people's smiles. That's kind of my focal point when I talk to somebody. And it really, literally just one day I was sitting there and I was like, I should be a dentist. And so I did.
And so I did.
That's what I decided to set my focus on, and turned out to, maybe it was fate, because I absolutely love what I do.
Love that. And, we've known you for a while. You work with our dear teammate, Drew Halverson, and I've worked with her over the years. And, but I know that you started as an associate. And then you started into building your own practice. So tell me a little bit about think back to that time, and when did that vision for your own practice start to take root? How did that transpire for you?
So right out of school, I went into a clinic practice. Saw lots of patients every day, all age groups, all kinds of dental issues, and became very good at working on teeth through that experience. I wanted something a little more slower paced where I could connect with my patients a little bit better, so I sought out a private practice that I could work at. I started a couple days a week, then I felt like I really liked that atmosphere better, and then found a more permanent position in a private practice.
Okay.
I think I was with 2 different private practices, and then kind of the same thing. Maybe it found me, maybe it was fate, but I was like, I need to do this. I need to do this my way. I mean, not that anybody else's way was bad, but just, as a practice owner and building building something for yourself,
yes,
you get to practice how you want to do and treat, and you develop your own relationship with the patients. And I wanted to open up something close to my home, close to my community, and really have my patients as my family. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I always try to, when we work with doctors in strategic planning and creating vision, and if they're going into a next chapter in their career or whatever the case may be, a big message that we try to press and have them start to evaluate is, what's right look like for you? If we're continuously trying to create a practice based upon what other people do or other people want, your joy and fulfillment in that work is going to be significantly limited because it's not your vision.
Absolutely.
And so it's important to get really clear on what your vision is, so that you can start to pursue and make the decisions and implement the things and do the training to do the work and take care of the patients in the way that you want to. And it sounds like that's the path that you've taken.
Yes, exactly.
Now, one of the things that you've done over the years, so how long have you owned your practice at this point?
We just had our 6th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. So now you have really taken a step my understanding is, into airway treatment.
Correct.
In your practice. Tell me, what led you to discover this and become so passionate about this particular treatment for your practice and your patients?
Well, I mean, kind of like you said, when you start out and you kind of have to, your vision focuses slowly on what's important to you and what you like. Right out of school, you like everything. Everything's fun. As long as you're doing dentistry, having fun. Well, I decided I wanted to do implants. So I signed up for this course. I took this course. And through that, I ended up getting a CBCT machine, a 3D X-ray machine. So I started looking at those a little differently. And then, there's always talk with colleagues on like the new and upcoming things in dentistry. I had heard several people mention airway, and I was like, that's kind of intriguing. I always have an open mind and love to learn new things. And right around the time I started hearing the buzz about airway, my mom suffered a heart attack. She's okay. She's doing great. But there were so many things that seemed to parallel to what I was learning about airway with what I saw happen to my mom. She didn't have any kind of blockages. She didn't have to have stents or any kind of surgery. They said that it was broken heart syndrome, which I didn't buy that because there was really nothing for her to be brokenhearted about.
Right.
So I started reading, doing, more research, and I said, hey, Mom, have you ever had a sleep study? And she's like, no. And I said, maybe that's something you should bring up to your cardiologist. So she did, and he's like, yeah, great idea, let's do that. So turns out she was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea.
Wow.
And knowing what we know now about the signs, I mean, looking back over my childhood, I was like, the signs were there.
Yes.
Like, if somebody had looked at her the way I look at my patients now, maybe we could have saved her from having a heart attack. And so that's on my heart every day as I'm working with my patients, is maybe I can save you from having a health crisis later in life.
Wow, that gives me chills. Really, I mean, wow, what a purpose-rooted service to study. I can't imagine. So, what did that journey? Where did you start? How did you start that? Did you connect to some particular types of training that were the most beneficial for you? How did you start to integrate that?
So this was 4 years ago, I believe. There was Dr. Felix Liao had written a book called 6 Foot Tiger, 3 Foot Cage. And that was kind of my gateway into it. I read that book, and I promise you, when I was reading through that book, I would turn the page and my jaw was on the floor. I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's my mom, that's my sister, that's my dad. I kept seeing the parallels to my family. And then you go to a clinic and see my patients, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know, I can see, like, I have a why, and I can tell you why.
Wow.
And so I read and took his courses and just kept growing from there.
And it seems like such a key piece of the whole, this kind of aha discovery that we've had, the oral systemic link and airway and the connections from the mouth to the body, and how we in dentistry are really on the front lines in more ways than we even realized.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And can be with the proper training and awareness. What does this look like now? How long have you been providing this treatment in your practice at this point?
So once I started learning about it, I hit the ground running. I mean, I started talking to all of my patients about it. So I've probably been doing it for about 3.5 years.
And what, of your patients, who are the patients that are benefiting from this? What is that looking like for you?
So, I mean, it's really everybody from people that have been diagnosed with sleep apnea and know that there's a dental connection and get referred to me through that, all the way to kids that, are just maybe mouth breathing, maybe don't have any outward, signs, but there's something going on in their mouth. And now that I know what to look for, we're able to screen for this and educate parents and everything and get these kids help. It's always what I always say. My team laughs at me, but like, kids is where the magic happens. We can prevent so many things down the road if we can get a kid's oral health and mouth and development on track.
Wow. And so that question, you say you tell your team and laugh with your team. What role do they play in this? When you start to integrate a very specific type of evaluation, treatment, what role does your team play in supporting you and supporting this for the patients?
So it turns out my team is just as passionate about it as I am.
Okay.
It's kind of the same evolution through what I experience with each team member that comes on board. they start to see, oh my gosh, maybe that's my husband has those signs. My kid, maybe I need to get my kid in here. And so they learn about it and they become passionate about it, and they're speaking and they're educating the patients as well. They're sharing their experiences.
Yeah.
I've had team members have their kids or family members go through treatment with me, and so they get to share their experiences as well.
Has all of your clinical team gone through airway treatment training with you? Have they gone through some of the coursework with you at this point?
Yes, they have. We have gone to several courses together. We've brought some people in, and we're doing lunch and learns and things like that, and learning more. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. 3 years not doing it, 3 years doing it now. Was there a process that you followed to start to introduce this? Is it like a we now know kind of conversation you were having with patients? How did you start to engage in that conversation with established patients, or start even promoting it to patients outside of your practice?
So one of the key questions I always ask is, how is your sleep? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you feel rested? And I sometimes get that look like, why does my dentist care about my sleep?
Do you do this in the new patient conversations or
and
anytime?
Even existing patients that maybe have not been screened or haven't been to us in a while or something like that. Yeah, and so we go off of, did you know you grind your teeth? And we now know that can be linked to an impaired airway or something along those lines. So we start the conversation that way. And I think that just in general in our society, we're seeing more people being interested in, systemic health and root cause and things like that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of really educated patients that are coming to me with great questions.
Are you promoting this externally to your patient, to your community, that this is something that you provide? Are they coming to you now specifically for this?
They are. And so I have a really close working relationship with a chiropractor in town, and she really understands what I do, and what I do is so closely related with what chiropractors do, and then
yes.
I have some myofunctional therapists that I work with as well. And so they're looking at speech and tongue ties, which is definitely related to airway.
Yes.
And so they refer to me as well. So it's really nice having a network. I have an ENT that we work with because we talk about tonsils and adenoids and septums and all kinds of stuff. And so it's a really great network of people that we refer to each other and really work on getting the patient feeling better.
And that's an interesting outcome, because we always talk about the power of referrals, and in specialty practices, for those of you listening, if you're a specialty practice, we always talk about the power of referrals from general practices and other practices. But what you're experiencing is outside of dentistry. So the power of collaboration and referrals from other healthcare providers in other areas of focus for people. So that's a really interesting. Did you seek those out? Did that start to just naturally happen? How did you start to create those collaborative relationships?
It started to naturally happen. So a lot of my patient base is a holistic community. People that, the term is crunchy, that are looking for more natural alternatives instead of, medicine. So they seek chiropractic care a lot of times, and my chiropractor reached out to me and she said, hey, I've heard your name several times from several patients, and what you got going on over there? What's the deal? And so that's kind of how that started.
Do you bring them in to see or to experience it themselves? How do you do that? That's so neat.
My chiropractor and her whole family are patients of mine, and they've undergone airway treatment with me.
So, when you start to have those curious conversations come your way, invite them to come and have an evaluation to help educate them on what that experience would be like. Because, boy, to have those kind of voices in your corner, and for you all to be looking at and looking for the same symptoms. I mean, you're obviously, Dr. Klein, driven by the experience you had with someone you love and wanting to be preventive medicine, a preventive approach for others to not experience that. And so what a great way to start to create advocates in your community outside of dentistry by showing them and letting them experience the evaluation themselves. It would be just a tremendous relationship builder, I am sure.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
So let's talk obstacles.
Okay.
What were some of the obstacles? It seems to me that things are really starting to take off here for you at this point. But when you were getting started, what were some of the obstacles that you ran into lessons learned perhaps in terms of integrating this type of treatment into the practice?
So I think the biggest thing for me was that I was telling patients things that nobody else has ever told them before. And so, there were the patients that were like, I don't know. Nobody's ever said that. That sounds weird. I don't think this is for me. And then you had, of course, the patients that were like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I have to know more. So, you just kind of keep going through those patients, and pretty soon you have, enough raving fans that,
Yes.
the word spreads.
Well, and persistence had to just carrying on, even when in those moments where you got hit with questions or resistance, it didn't change the trajectory of your path.
Correct. Yeah.
And did you work on specific verbal skills as a team or for yourself? Were there some key verbal skills that you started to introduce into the conversation to help you engage in those conversations with the patients?
Yeah, so it became more of asking questions from the patient, kind of getting their backstory and not just like opening a fire hydrant and pouring all this information down their throat. I think when we learn new things and we get really excited about it, we have a tendency to be like, hey, did you know this and this and this and this? And they're like, oh my gosh, I just came for a cleaning.
Didn't come here for that. Thanks so much. Didn't come here for that. Yeah. Well, and I thought one of the great ones that you just said was just asking the question, how's your sleep?
Wait.
How are you sleeping? And I think doctors that are focused in some more of those holistic approaches to care ask those kinds of questions that patients are never asked before.
Right. I was at a CE course recently for the American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine, and the keynote speaker said something along the lines of, where do most of our sleep patients come from in a sleep clinic? And it's from the emergency room. It's people that have had a heart attack, people that have had a health crisis.
Yes.
And nobody's looking at their sleep or screening them prior to them having some kind of health crisis.
And that kind of opens up another can of worms. Because just like, it's always a continuous, constant pursuit to educate patients, to build value for dental care in general, to help them see the value and the need for that. Because for some reason or another, dentistry we're always behind the eight ball a little bit, in terms of where value is placed in the patient's mindset. So now you're talking about a whole other thing that they're not even looking for.
Right.
How do you overcome that? I mean, how do you help them see? Is it really just get the message out and the willing will come, the interested will come, or the engagement of that, of helping them see there's a better way to get them healthy before the big event?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the patients that we talk to, they just seem so very grateful. I mean, we have an overwhelming majority of patients that are like, well, thank you. Thank you for that information. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Like, even if they don't do anything or act on it now, at least they have the education. And we get patients that are very appreciative that we're looking for things that other people may not have mentioned before or screened them for before.
Do you see this type of treatment and care being the way of the future of where dental practices, of the role we play in our patients' lives?
1,000%. I really, truly do. I've even said that recently, that I truly believe this is going to be the standard of care. I mean, the American Dental Association, or I think maybe the pediatric portion, recommends that we screen for sleep apnea, and that we look for things. I mean, so it's already coming. These seeds are already been planted, and so I really do think that this is going to be the future.
So just like standard of care is that we screen for we do oral cancer screenings, that the next phase of those patient appointments is that we screen for airway issues.
For airway issues, for sleep apnea, for sleep disordered breathing. I think tongue ties and lip ties are going to be more of a forefront and more of a focus. We just got to get the education out there to different modalities.
Yes. So for those that are listening or watching, that this is something that they're seeking out or they're interested in or curious about, what advice would you give those doctors on either where to start or what those next steps would be?
take a course. There's so many. I mean, there's so many. There's the Breathe Institute with Dr. Zaghi. There's the Vivos Institute, which offers a whole slew of courses of all kinds. There's Ben Moralia's Airway Health Solutions. There's so many now. It's very easy to get more information and start learning to do this.
I love that. Well, Dr. Klein, thank you so much for joining us. And it's such a pleasure to work with you and to see you thriving and embracing these newfound ways that we now know we can help our patients become healthy, stay healthy, and have healthy, happy lives. So we appreciate you and appreciate this time.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's been fun.
And so for all of you that are listening, listen to what Dr. Klein says. If this is something that is of interest to you, do you see that there's an already established need in your community or in your practice to explore airway treatment for your patients? Find that course. Seek out, the people that share a philosophy that feels like it resonates with you, and seek out that course. Get training for yourself, get training for your team, work on those verbal skills, and start to implement these life-changing services in your practice. I agree with you, Dr. Klein. I think this could be the wave of the future of standard of care for how we take care of our patients now and into the future. So
I sure hope so.
I do too. So thank you. And thanks to all of you in the Jameson Podcast community. Be well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. See you next time.